Hello, my name is Daniel Burris, and welcome to Conversations with the Masters. You know, what we're trying to do is to create anticipatory leaders, anticipatory organizations versus reactionary ones. And in our Conversations with the Masters, I select a master, a true master, to interview on one of the different areas of the anticipatory organization and anticipatory leader programs that I put together. And as most of you know, I've looked at trends and over the last 39 years have come up with the fact that all trends are either hard trends based on future facts that will happen, meaning they cannot be stopped. But that lets you see disruption before it disrupts, turning disruption into a choice. It lets you see problems before you have them, so you can pre-solve them versus just letting them happen. The other is soft trends, and soft trends are based on ifs and maybes. They might happen. Doesn't mean they won't, but they are not a future fact. And as you know, I love both. What do I love about a soft trend? If you don't like it, you can change it. What do I like about a hard trend? You can see problems before you have them. You can see disruptions before they disrupt, allowing you to become what I would call a positive disruptor, creating the transformations that need to happen to elevate relevancy, accelerate innovation and growth. So, out of the three categories of hard trends, we have technology, government regulations, and the one we're going to talk about today, specifically demographics. So, let me introduce our expert. Over the past 40 plus years, Dr. Ken Dykewald has emerged as North America's foremost visionary and original thinker regarding the lifestyle, marketing, healthcare, economic, and workforce implications of the baby boomer age wave. Ken is a psychologist, a gerontologist, and best-selling author of, get this, 19 books on age-related issues. Here's just a couple, including Body Mind, Age Wave, Age Power, What Retirees Want, and a fascinating and insightful memoir that he's come up with recently that I really recommend, Radical Curiosity, One Man's Search for Cosmic Magic and a Purposeful Life. And I sure love Purposeful Life. He is the creative producer and host of the PBS documentary, The Boomer Century, and his new PBS special, Life's Third Age. And by the way, I've seen those. They are fantastic. You're going to want to catch those. Since 86, Ken has been the founder and CEO of AgeWave, an acclaimed think tank and consultancy focused on the social and business implications and opportunities of global aging and rising longevity, two subjects I want to get into in just a minute. Ken has addressed more than 2 million people worldwide in his speeches to corporations, associations, social service, and government groups. Ken, please join me and welcome to Conversations with the Masters.
It's such a pleasure to be with you, my friend.
Yeah, and for all of us out there, I've known Ken for many decades. I have been a big fan of Ken all the way through his career and watching what he's doing. And I'm excited to pick your brain right now on baby boomers and what that all means, both in terms of being anticipatory. What are some problems we can see that we could pre-solve, as well as what are opportunities that we can see? So, what are a few insights that might be good to start sharing about this longevity wave that we have out there? That might be a good place to start. Let's hit longevity for a minute.
Yeah. So first, let me sort of set the stage. This may seem like I'm making something up, but throughout most of history, most people didn't age; they died. This might sound crazy to believe, but the beginning of the 20th century, the average life expectancy at birth was 47. The century before, the average life expectancy at birth was 35. And if you go back throughout all of human history, throughout 99% of human history, the average life expectancy at birth was under 18. So there have always been some 50 and 60 and 80-year-olds, but not a lot. So infection, trauma, childbirth, accidents, war used to take people down in their early years. But because of breakthroughs in the last century or so, antibiotics, public health, refrigeration, pharmacopoeia, self-care, all of a sudden, most of us now are going to live 80, 90, maybe even more years in our lives. And that's never happened before. Never on this planet has that occurred before. Right now, there's 1 billion people in the world over the age of 60, and that number is going to double in the next 20 years. And so the first question is like, whoa, we've designed our automobiles to match the form and fit of 22-year-old men. We designed our medical system to take care of young people's aches and pains and problems. It was never really designed for the chronic health problems of older people. And hence, we do a pretty crummy job of matching our health span to our lifespan. We haven't really designed our media. It's very youth oriented. Even our language. I haven't seen you for a few years. If I were to say to you, hey, Daniel, great to see you. You're looking very young today. You'd probably think that was a compliment. But why don't I say you're looking great today? Why do we have to tell people that young is better than old? And the other side of it is that we're beginning now to have enough role modeling. When John Glenn went up into space, he told the young reporters, hey, just because I'll be 77 doesn't mean I still don't have dreams. And I thought, that's kind of interesting, because I think we've always thought that young people have dreams and you either fulfill them or you don't. And then when you're old, nothing. And then Betty White turned 99 and everybody said, wait a minute. I always thought old people were kind of decrepit. She's pretty cool. She was funny. She was beautiful. She owned her age. And then, I was watching Tom Cruise in Top Gun, and whether you like Tom Cruise or not, I'm thinking, wow, he's 59. When they made Cocoon a few decades ago, Wilford Brimley, he was 54. And he looked like he could be Tom Cruise's grandfather. So people are growing old in ways that we've never seen before. And then just recently, Serena Williams says she's not retiring, she's evolving. And so what's happening is that the whole look and feel of life is moving around. And people are now beginning to contemplate 100-year or more life. And along with that, what am I going to do? Who am I going to be? How can I reinvent myself? And then, as I know we're going to get into, what are all the things and experiences I might be interested in buying, because the mature marketplace is about to go wild?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is you don't want to die before you're dead. And
but a lot of people do.
Well,
a lot of people
point.
Are done.
Exactly.
A lot of people are done. They just sort of wind it up, and then they live for 25 more years. And yeah. So what do you mean when you say you don't want to die before you're dead?
Well, if you think about it, there's chronological aging, and we are going to continue to age. Matter of fact, that's a hard trend. Chronologically, you will get older if you're lucky. Otherwise, you're dead. But there's a psychological aging. I know people that are, I know old people that are young and young people that are old, and it's not their chronological age, it's their mindset. And then third, of course, there's their biological, aging, which, don't want your biological aging to be older than your chronological aging. Yet we have a lot of that taking place right now. And you can kind of predict the future of a person like that. And it's not good. I forget who said it originally. It's a great line. I think it was Woody Allen who said, death doesn't bother me. It's the dying part. And so it's, what I want is not longevity. What I want is healthy longevity.
Yeah. Let me hammer on that. Right? Let me hammer on that for a second.
Yes, please.
There's a Greek myth of this beautiful goddess who's immortal. Zeus's daughter, her name was Eos, and as fate would have it, she falls in love with a handsome, muscular, strapping warrior named Tithonus. And she goes to Zeus and she asks if she could ask for one favor. And Zeus says, what's that? And she says, I'd like for you to grant my lover immortality. And Zeus said, are you sure that's what you want for him? And she says, yes, done. But then as she's leaving Zeus's chamber, she realized she forgot to ask for health. And so in the fable, Tithonus got older and sicker, and his bones crumbled and his organs rotted, but he could never die. That's not what we want. What people want is to not live 80 or 90 or 100 years in pain and suffering for the last 25. We want to be able to match our health spans to our lifespans, to live a full, healthy, cognitively functioning life, productive, engaged, learning, curious, trying new things, and then we pass away. versus what's unfortunately more likely to have been happening in recent decades, because we kind of botched up our approach to longevity, is that a lot of people live healthy and then they have 10 to 15 years of unpleasant decline. And that's what we got to fix going forward.
Yeah, if you think about it, another way to think about it, if the body is the temple of the mind, the bad news is you can't move. The good news is you can renovate. And so I think what I want to do is I want to be renovating by exercise, diet, and eating, because I'd like this physical thing that my mind is housed in to be with me and to be working well.
Yeah, and to be feeling good and not to be. Yeah. And by the way, let me share with you that partly what was fun for me about getting excited to be on this program with you, because you were kind to say you've been a fan of mine for a while, and I've been a fan of yours for decades and decades, is that people often, when they imagine the future, they sort of leave themselves out. So it's like the Jetsons. It'll be a bunch of young people with all kinds of wild new technologies. And then people say, what are we going to do with all those old people in the future? And I like to say, well, you're going to be one of those old people in the future. I am? Yeah. I mean, if you don't pass away in the future, one thing you can be sure of is that you're going to be older than you are now. Now, that's chronologically. So I'm 72. In 10 years, I'll be 82. But then the question becomes, who do I want to be? So there's the hard trend, which is we're getting older. But then there's the soft trend, which is in what way? And who do we want to grow older like? And what might we need to learn? Some of your viewers and listeners might be thinking, well, I haven't learned anything new for a while, and I don't really know what TikTok is, and I don't care about youth. And if you kind of park yourself in yesteryear, the future is not going to be nearly as engaging for you. And so one of the new challenges in this personal futurism projection is we have to figure out how to continually re-inspire and reinvent ourselves.
Yeah, we also got to think about the financial aspects as we get older too. For example, most of our financial planning is based on you're going to make it until your 80s, 82, 83, 84, and then you're gone. But if your financial planning is around, I'm going to make it to 110 or 110 and be vibrant and be traveling and enjoying life, have you really saved enough money? And and what are you going to do maybe to live not just a successful life? I know you and I have both shared the idea that really what we want is a significant life, and understanding that difference. By the way, let me use that as a segue real quickly to promote something here. The subject we've been talking about in the last few minutes is really about purpose. It's about self. We haven't talked yet about baby boomer marketing, which is huge, the amount of wealth they have, which is gigantic, the amount of influence they have, which is enormous. I want to get into those subjects, but your book, your memoir, Radical Curiosity, let me put that up for people to see right now. I strongly recommend this. It is an excellent book because it's not about Ken, even though it's a memoir. It is about a journey, and it's got so loaded with insights that can help us all, because if you're lucky, you will age, and you want to age in the right way. So I just wanted to throw that up there real quick and recommend that book, because it really does talk about what we're talking about now. Okay, go ahead, Ken.
Well, let me say a word about that book project, and then we're going to jump into this discussion, and I'm going to put you on the spot first in a moment anyhow. So what got me to write a memoir? It's like, I mean, I'm not like, I'm not Bruce Springsteen, so like, who cares about my life? But I became captivated years ago. My company, AgeWave, was doing a study about inheritance. And in the focus groups, nobody wanted to talk about inheritance. They didn't like the word. They thought it was like chopping up the spoils and who gets what. And so I said to the focus group moderator, try another word, try legacy. Who wants to leave a legacy? Who wants to receive a legacy? And everybody did. And then the more we asked, we realized that legacy was partly about property and wealth, but it was also, there was a study at the University of Minnesota that said it all. Who gets grandma's pie plate? There are some things that may not be worth much on the open market, but to a family member, They're very valuable. You know, dad's baseball glove or a house by a lake. But the most important part of legacy that people wanted to leave and receive were their life lessons, right? Life lessons. And then I did some homework and I realized that several religious traditions for thousands of years have believed that everyone, when they pass their 40th or 50th birthday, should have two wills in mind. One is a material will. What's the stuff you have? And when your time comes, who gets what? But then more important, they said, is what's called an ethical will, which is kind of an odd use of words, but the ethical will is, what have you learned? What are the lessons you've learned that you want to pass on to generations way beyond your time? And if you don't gather them up, if you don't write them down or speak them into a recorder or turn them into some kind of something, they're gone. So I thought, you know, my dad passed away, and I thought, I'm going to gather up the lessons I learned. And I've been fortunate, like you know, when you write books, you get to meet all sorts of interesting other people. So I've met 5 presidents and all sorts of interesting celebrities and gurus. And, you know, I've met interesting people. So my life lessons were, you know, chock full of crazy stories. And I started out as a physicist and then got interested in human potential, lived at Esalen and Big Sur in the 1970s, and then kind of started the modern movement in gerontology. So I've had a kind of a wild ride, and along the way, try to figure out how to become a businessman. And I've had a few successes along the way. And gathering my life stories was very energizing because it allowed me to kind of see the patterns in my life and to see what rose up as more important and what parts of my life were I wouldn't bother sharing with anybody or teaching people because wasn't much in it. And what it leads to, as you hinted, is the realization that it's not just about the pursuit of success, which is what, you know, the American dream or the world dream. It's the realization that significance matters, that giving back, being kinder, knowing how to help others, being able to have empathy, or as our friend Danny Goleman talks about, emotional intelligence. So as we live longer lives, we have the opportunity to kind of climb up that mountain and make sense of all the different parts of our journey. And then possibly, even if there's any folks who are interested, share some of it back. Let me answer your question about retirement, and then I've got a question for you. I have served on lots of geroscience, as it's called, panels in the last few years. And during COVID, a lot of it was on Zoom. And I can't tell you how many meetings and scientific conversations I've been in where people have said, not necessarily in the next 2 or 3 years, but probably in the next 10 or 20, because of the exponential movement of information. You know, Moore's law, doubles in power, halves in cost every 18 to 24 months. We're going to start seeing breakthroughs in medicine, in CRISPR, in focused ultrasound, in the ability to rewrite genetic patterns, in the ability to maybe stop diseases, and maybe even alter the aging process itself. And so some of your viewers and listeners, and you're going to think I'm nuts when I say this, are going to find that living to 120 or more is in their future. Now, when Otto von Bismarck picked the retirement age of 65 in Germany in the 1880s, the life expectancy was only 45. So hardly anybody was going to live long enough to retire. Even when we created Social Security in the United States, life expectancy was only 63. Today, a lot of us make a mistake. We hear life expectancy at birth is, by the way, in the United States, it's been 79. It's dropped to 77 during COVID, but that's at birth. And most of us are older than that. If you're already 65, another 20 years is commonplace, living to the mid 80s. Unless you're a woman, women live about 5 years longer than men, or unless you've got access to good ideas and good information and good medicine, in which case you'll live even longer. And that's still waiting for these crazy breakthroughs to happen. So if you're going to live 80, 90, or 100 years of life, unless you're like Bill Gates or Elon Musk, you probably don't have enough money. I didn't, to say, I'm just going to stop working at 64 and I'm going to live off of my wealth for the next 30 or 40 years. So a lot of people are thinking about how much money am I really going to need? Because I might outlive my money. And I don't want to do that. Second, maybe it's not so terrible to keep working. And maybe I work flexibly. Maybe I work part-time or do something new, do something different. Maybe I relocate to a less expensive home or part of town or part of the world. There was another futuristic show in the 1980s, Golden Girls. Maybe I get some housemates, because who believes that everybody ought to have their own home? It's very expensive. And so you're going to see people doing all kinds of workarounds and course corrections to be able to live their longer lives with more financial comfort. And it will probably involve some additional earning. But here's my question for you. I heard a rumor that decades ago, you decided that every year you were going to learn something new. And I don't mean learn a new word. What's the truth behind that rumor?
Yeah, well, I did. Back long ago, decades ago, when I turned 23, I decided that I wanted to discover what's inside, because I had a feeling that most people, when they finally leave this planet, have not discovered all that is inside themselves. And I'd like to have some discovery, find out what's inside. So I decided to learn one new thing a year, because I figured one is doable, two maybe not, but one could be. So one year I learned how to scuba dive. One year I learned how to mountain climb. One year I got into photography. One year I learned how to make films. One year I learned how to fly. One year I learned how to do fancy dives off a diving board. One year I learned how to dance. One year I learned how to cook. And you know, the list goes on, because it's been many decades. One year I learned how to play a flute. I mean, I play a dozen instruments, and people would say, how could you do that? Well, one a year is not that hard. You know, so matter of fact, I learned how to play the flute long decades ago when I was taking a graduate class, and I had to drive a couple times a week to about an hour drive out, an hour drive back to this class. So I got a flute, and I put on a little Jethro Tull on the tape deck and played the flute and drove.
Aqualung, probably Aqualung.
It was, and I drove with my knee. Well, and by the way, one of those years, there was an open mic on Thursday nights at a comedy club. This was about 15 years before I started writing and speaking. So I didn't know I'd be speaking. And I just decided to do it. Why? It was scary, man. I mean, I knew I could get my buddies laughing, but could I get an audience I didn't know laughing? And all
Were
of
they
that.
laughing at your jokes, or were they laughing at you trying to be a comedian?
Well, that's another thing. But the point is, I've had a very rich life because I've been tapping into it. And maybe if you may be the greatest flute player in the world, but if you never picked up a flute, how would you know? And by the way, if you picked up a flute and it wasn't so good, try drums. You know, there's thousands of instruments. And if it isn't music, try something else. Now, I don't want to spend more time on this, but my point is, one thing a year could do something pretty amazing. Those of you listening, consider that. Consider that.
I think, by the way, and I've never met another person who's been doing what you've been doing. And I think it's a fabulous model that we all think about. Not, by the way, keep in mind that most of us have pursued careers for our whole lives because some 18-year-old version of ourselves, one night we were like probably drunk, we decided we wanted to be a dentist, or we decided we wanted to be a school teacher or something. Now, we might have been very mindful when we made that decision, but you know, sometimes we pursue things in our life because some teacher told us we weren't good at something else, or we never tried more things. One of the nice things about living a long life, which you're a great exemplar for, is you can try lots of things. And who cares if you're not perfect at it on the first go around? And you might find painting or music or comedy or improv or teaching or volunteering, and you say, God, I like this more than anything I've ever done. But you got to try. You got to try.
So here's an action based on what we just talked about for people to consider. Let's say that you're listening to this and you're 20 or 23. Well, you're like I was. You've got a long time, hopefully a long runway ahead of you. You could start doing that. But what if you're 70 right now? And you might be thinking, well, I should have done that back when I was 23 like Dan. And I would say, oh, no. Listen to what Ken and I were just talking about. you may be living into 100, 110, 120. You got a long way to go. You got a long runway yet. One a year, hey, maybe you should start at 70. Maybe you
I'll
should
give
start.
you a few more action steps.
All
So
right, good.
let's start with that one. And that is that don't be so set in your ways that you're unwilling to try something. And there's lots of community colleges and lots of drum teachers and lots of churches and Ys with a program. You can go to a Zumba class and you may discover that you're a Latin dancer all these years you never tried before. That's one. Another action step is take really good care of your body. Daniel, I got to tell you, working in gerontology now for 48 years, I'm stunned to see that we have a population, and this is not me shaming folks. It's just like we know that if you're 2/3 of our population in the United States is overweight. Many parts of the world, people are leaner. We know that people don't eat healthy foods. And I've been studying the aging brain, and to have brain health for life, a mostly plant-based diet with anti-inflammatory inclinations is a wise way to go. So there's obviously guests you've had on your programs and your podcast. Take really great care of your body. Another thing, keep curiosity in your life. Too many people, as they get older, they just kind of turn the lights off, and they're talking about back in the day, and that's fine, but keep curiosity alive. It's what'll attract younger people to you. It's what'll keep you fresh and sharp, and it may even open new doors. And last, I'd say, it's funny, a few years ago, we did a survey of 20 countries around the world, representing 2/3 of the world's population. And we asked the elders, what was the secret to a happy longevity? Okay. And these were everywhere from Malaysia to Mexico City to, Berlin. The same answer came back. It's the people you care about and who care about you. So I know that we don't talk much about social isolation and, do your own thing and, what's your personal dream and such. But this action step, I'd say, is if you haven't made a new friend for a while, make some new friends. And if you got some friends and they're not turning you on anymore, trade them out. And if there's some neighbors living down the street and you haven't ever just said to them, hey, I don't know much about you. You know what? Who are you? Build your social network. And I don't necessarily mean online, although that's fine, but in real life as well. So take great care of your body. Keep trying new things. Bring curiosity front and center, and build your connections with other humans. It'll make you feel better. And I'm going to add one other slice to that. We've done studies and the folks at Harvard have done a lot of studies that older adults that take interest in younger people and mentor them and help them are 3 times happier than people who don't. And right now, in the last decade, we've got about 70 million retirees, and the average retiree watches 47 hours of television a week, and 76% of our retired population don't volunteer at all.
Ooh, yeah.
That's a mistake. Let's call that a soft trend, one that we can fix, because you don't want to find yourself at 50 or 70 or 90 with nothing interesting going on, with no connections to younger generations, and no feeling that you've turned to thinking about leaving your legacy, because that's where the action comes.
Well, helping others feeds the soul, and it feeds everything. So, being of service is so powerful. Looking at from a business standpoint, and looking at the baby boomers on another direction now, because I want to give some clues on that. And of course, we have a global audience right now, people from all over the world. And I understand there are some countries, of course, with young populations. There are countries with older populations. So, but again, aging chronologically continues to happen. Yep. So from a business standpoint, for example, if you're a retailer and your primary customer is young versus your primary customer is older, you need a different store for a different layout. For example, if it's an older customer, you know what you need? You need some chairs for people to sit down. You know what you need? Really good bathrooms. If you have a retail outlet and it's for younger people, you don't need bathrooms, you don't need chairs. Now, all I'm getting at, and you don't need to have everything in big type. So we just have to really think with who is our market, who is our customer, whether you're selling insurance or whatever it may be. And by the way, this is true for online too. Does my website, if my primary customers are boomers, would it look different than if it was 20s or 30s? And by the way, it should look different. It should function different if you know you're going for a target. Talk about that a little bit, Ken.
Yeah, you make a great point. First of all, it used to be that older people were very frugal because that was a generation having been traumatized by the Depression. They didn't like to spend money. They never did. When they got older, they were even worse. Today's 60 and 50 and 70-year-olds actually like to spend money. Second, it used to be that older people were poor. They're not now. Young people are poor. It's actually quite rough to see because the younger generations really got the wind knocked out of them due to COVID, and they are struggling more financially than any other group in the country. Turns out the 50, 60, and 70-year-olds have the greatest amount of wealth. In the United States, for example, and in Europe, people over 50 control 70% of all the wealth. And the third thing is it used to be that people were set in their ways. So if you decided what kind of car you were going to drive and what kind of shampoo you were going to use when you were 20, you would stick with that for life. And that era is over. People are trying new things. There's new technology. There's new ideas. People are falling in love at 50. They're going to the gym for the first time at 60. They're dreaming up new ideas. The highest rate of successful entrepreneurialism in the world are people over the age of 55 now. You know, somebody who worked as a school teacher, or they were in the military, and now they think, I want to start a company because, and they got some chops because they've been around the block a few times. And so if you're a marketer and you're still stuck with youth and believing that people over 50 are not worth your attention, you may want to realize that for the first time in history, we now have 6 generations alive at the same time, and they're at different stages in life. And if you looked at the cold hard facts, people over 50 have more money to spend on health, more money to spend on travel, on home renovation, on gifts, on automobiles. They're a very, very valuable potential consumer base, and they're hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, and as a lot of people that are on this program right now who've been following me now, one of the principles I teach is to end the war between the young and the old. And the war is a hidden war, but it's a war of lack of trust. In other words, if you're young, you're looking at the older people in the organization and you're thinking, wow, they're like a fossil. They think they're moving fast, but they're really moving slow. Maybe I need to leave this job and get another one. And if you're older, you're looking at the younger people and you're saying to yourself, man, how's the world going to survive them? They only want to look at their phones. So what we need to realize is we have a perfect fit, because if you're older, you're in the box and you can't get out. You always say, got to get out of the box. No, it's your career. You fortified it. You built it. I'd like it to have glass walls. You can look through it. But the young people haven't built their fortress yet. And they're more open-minded. And by the way, they know more about technology than the older ones, but they don't know how to apply it. The older ones would know how they'd like to apply it, but they don't know what it is. You know what? We should work together.
You're exactly right. And I would say to you that, and I apologize for being disrespectful for you, the master of this program. It's not just young and old, because we've got, like I said, 6 generations. So, and it's not just boomers who are growing older. It's silent generation, as Gen X too are over 50 now. So what we've got is all kinds of age diversity. People who grew up at different moments in time, people who've got different appetites and different competencies, and bringing together people from different stages of life to dream up the new technologies, to dream up the new services, to dream up the new adventure vacation holidays are going to get you a better result than if you just isolate people based on their birth year and think that that'll get the job done. And I'm troubled because too many of the work environments don't put 60 or 70-year-olds around the table. So, I was brought into Amazon right before COVID to do an analysis with my team of everything they were doing. And they were making a lot of mistakes having to do with people over 50 with their technologies and their software and their algorithms, because they just didn't have any 60 or 70-year-olds around the table. So bring in some of those retirees, make them unretired, and bring them back for some more input. The more intelligence we can gather from people at different stages of life, the better we can be with the creation of products and services.
Yeah, exactly. And we have also, with so many boomers retiring in the trades, for example, and not enough younger people coming into those trades, there is a problem, but there's also a solution. Now, I know you're going to make a point to that, and let me just do a quick solution example, because one of the things I've said is maybe your future workforce is the workforce that just retired, but you need to engage them in a new way. For example, let's say that I'm a plumber and I'm now retired, a master plumber. And you know what? I'm going to live a lot longer than I thought. I'm going to need a little bit more money than I thought. Why don't I do remote mentoring? So I could have the new plumber that knows nothing on the job wearing a little thing on their head that's just a 4K camera so that the other guy can see exactly what I'm looking at. And I got little earphones so I can hear what he says. And the mentor is on the other side who decides to work whatever hours he wants from Boca Raton or wherever he is, and says, all right, now I want you to take the tool and I want you to turn that thing, because he can see what he's looking at. In other words, he's getting real-time training on the job. The old is teaching the young. I'm just giving you a quick example. Technology can let us do that. Why aren't we thinking out of the box and realizing we can do all these things, and technology is giving us the tools to actually expand the workforce to be multi-generational instead of just a few?
Let me build on that. I've been annoyed because a lot of people, when they talk about how folks want to be as they live a longer life, they say they want to be youthful. And what I've learned is that people, it's more important, they want to be useful. Yeah, being youthful is cool, but being useful gives you a sense of purpose, gives you a reason to get up in the morning. We've also, in our studies at AgeWave, learned that the new generations, when they turn 40, 50, 60, they say they want to keep working longer, but they don't want to work as hard and they don't want to work as many hours. So flex work, working 4 days a week or working 8 months a year or cycling in and out of projects. And they'd also like to be able to teach, to mentor, exactly as you're saying, that if I'm 50 or 60 or 70 and I've been a doctor or a nurse or a school teacher, I've learned some things along the way. And I'd like to be able to share them down to the next generations. And, Chip Conley, a friend of mine who was the force behind the growth of Airbnb, Chip talks about the word mentorn, that it's not just I teach you, but you teach me back. I'll be your mentor, but I'm also going to be your intern. And if we had more of that going on between the different generations, I think we'd all be a lot more alive and a lot smarter and get a lot more done.
Well, we're running close to the end of our time. And what I want to do is just have a couple of things that I picked up from what we're talking about here. And one of them is there are many chapters to your book of life that has not been written yet. And if you're on a chapter that's beginning to be a bummer, you need a new chapter. And you're the author, let's face it. And you're going to live longer than you thought. I want you to understand that right now. That's what we're both telling all of you out there. You're going to live longer than you thought. Have you thought about that? Are you planning for that? Are you planning your health for that? Are you planning your wealth for that? Are you planning your impact for that? Are you looking at giving and not just what's in it for me, but how can I help others so that I can live a meaningful life, a significant life? I also know that from it you talked about the entrepreneurial potential of the aging population globally is unbelievable, and tapping into that using technology. Looking at, again, the health element, but our mindset is one that we talked about early. Are we, again, is our mindset aging faster than our bodies or faster than our chronology? So let's make sure that we're looking at the business opportunities, which are huge. There's a lot of money, a lot of wealth in that baby boom. There's a lot of influence in that baby boom. Even though many are retiring, they're not necessarily retiring from influence. You pay attention to that. And then what's your influence? And third, well, a third, fourth, or fifth, whatever it is, we were also talking about the opportunities of looking at your own business and not just the baby boomers, but again, we're focusing on that in this meeting, but there are many different demographic slices, and we used to have a one size fits all, but one size does not fit all. Ken, what are some parting, any parting insights that you want to give? And by the way, go to, let's put back up on the screen, many books that are outstanding books. I've got Radical Curiosity there. Going to AgeWave, you'll find all sorts of great materials. And I would really encourage you to do that and pick up the other books too. I'm author of 19 books, and they're really great. Okay, Ken, any final insights that might be action tied to it?
Yes, I would say, in addition to what I've said about taking good care of your body, keep curiosity alive, build your base of friends and loved ones. I would also say, be a role model and find role models. We have role models when we're young, and then you reach 50 or 60, you're not quite sure. You look around and you think, well, who out there is who I want to be? Find some role models. It can be very inspirational and helpful to have a person in your life where people, maybe they're in a TV show or sports figure who you say, they did it, I can do it. And I'd also say, take your lesson here, Daniel, about, even though it sounds maybe hard, but try something new each year. Try to keep yourself alive and fresh and reinventing yourself. You'll feel better. The people around you will find you more engaging, and you'll think of your future in a more hopeful way.
Well, Ken, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. It's been just fantastic, and I know that all of the people viewing this are going to want to go back and watch it again and pick out the jewels. So thank you, my friend. Thank you very much.
Great to be with you. Thank you, Daniel.